Welcome to Tax Defense Connect by DPZ with your host, Delphine Parigi. In each episode, we will discuss keeping and defending your empire against tax fraud accusations. Please note that the contents, opinions, discussions, and any other related information from this podcast is not intended to be tax or legal advice. Individuals and representatives of entities should consult with a tax professional based on the specific facts and circumstances of the taxpayer to determine how federal, state, and foreign tax laws as applicable may apply to their specific situation. You can find the show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Now here's the host of Tax Defense Connect by DPZ, Delphine Parigi.
Hello everyone, I'm really happy to host the first episode of Tax Defense Connect. Here at DPZ Avocat, we've just released the 8th edition of our French criminal tax law newsletter. It's a deep dive into the decisions that are reshaping criminal tax law in France, fraudulent intent, procedural defects that can void proceeding, etc., and the broader trend of increasing criminalization of tax matters. I know it's a topic very hot in France, in many EU countries, but broadly speaking, on an international standpoint. And this is the whole point of this podcast. So today, I'm so honored to bringing that legal intelligence into life through conversation. Welcome to Tax Defense Connect. I'm Delphine Parigi, and for our very first episode, I'm joined by François Césure, who is an experienced corporate lawyer dedicated to the life science industry. Welcome, François.
Thank you, Delphine, for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here with you today and to answer your question about my activity. As you said, I'm a lawyer at the Paris Bar and specialize in life science and the healthcare industry mainly, and I have quite strong experience in this field, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. And I think my first question is a really tricky one, because when I asked you to join the show, I told you, what's your connection with criminal tax? And what was your answer to me?
It's indeed a tricky question. Hopefully, I have no connection with criminal tax issue. I have, of course, connection with tax issue in general, but to be totally honest, I never experienced a criminal tax issue. So my experience is weak in that field. Nonetheless, it's for us. When I say for us, for my customers, my clients, a real issue and a big issue. And sometimes some mistake can be made without any intention, and it's the worst scenario. It's to be taken by the patrol for such an issue, for a criminal tax issue. So, of course, it's a terrible case, I would say.
Yes, because this is why I really wanted you to open the Tax Defense Connect, because this is a whole concept about the connection. Coming from the private equity advisor services, I know that corporate advisory is quite hermetic to the fact that, for instance, in France, we had this law against tax fraud in 2018 already, and that this topic is dealt by, obviously, defense lawyers, some tax lawyers like myself, but it's really deep right now how we can say that a topic like when you draft contracts linked to substance, with transfer pricing, with VAT, in case an audit more than 100,000 euros in France, it can go to automatic prosecution. And this is where I think our roles as lawyers, is instead to be the one who are going to defense, because they are the defense lawyer, how we can integrate in our practice this question. It's not only criminal tax law, actually, there is also social contribution. So I understand you have not practiced any criminal tax defense. Have you already been, either when you were a corporate lawyer or in your previous activity as legal director, any training or practice sharing regarding having a prosecution on site at the head office? Is it something which is totally out of the topic?
No. It's definitely the topic. I had this experience, to be honest. And for me, the things the closer to your issue, tax criminal investigation, is compliance investigation in general. And I already faced a compliance investigation, the police coming to the office, asking for the CEO to be interviewed and stuff like that. The case even went to the court and to the criminal court. So I've got this kind of experience, not regarding tax issue, but more regarding compliance issue. And as I said, I work a lot in the life science industry. Life science industry is a very regulated industry where the rule of compliance are very broad, very precise, very present, I would say. So I already experienced a case like this.
But when you have experienced an investigation like that,
Yeah.
How you or your clients have reacted after that? It was a closed case, and then, okay, it happened. It is dealt by a defense lawyer, investigating directly with the directors, and then we close the carpet on it, and then forget with this topic. Or my question is how me as a tax lawyer, or generally as lawyers, we can make this compliance coming to life, because once again, today tax is not only a question of paying penalties. In many countries like Germany, if we fail to agreeing with the tax authorities on transfer pricing, we have a reassessment paying the overlap tax. In France, of course, you have to pay this overlap tax, but 80% penalties and then prosecution. The number of files is not so high as of today, but there is a trend and the data are coming. That's why, to your experience, how can we dig into this advisory area to bring this awareness, and that compliance is not only compliance, I would say?
No, but maybe you point out something, because you're talking about fraud. But behind fraud, there is an intention to do something wrong. And I think for me, the barrier is there. Are you, I don't know if it's the right term in English, but are you a frauder, someone who intentionally fraud the tax authority, or you just make a mistake? Because, you were talking about transfer price. I've got an experience with, documentation on transfer price and stuff like that. Generally speaking, we do our best, in link with finance direction, to build the better documentation possible, to bring all the the information needed for the tax authority control. So when you have a fraud regarding transfer price, it's because intentionally you wanted to hide something to the tax authority. And frankly speaking, in the group I worked, it was impossible to have such an intentional fraud. I think, from my vision, we were definitely there to avoid a fraud. We are definitely there to respect the law, to make, to do that. To make that everything is doing right, and to avoid any, as you said, reputational issue, because for an international group, it's the worst.
I thank you very much for bringing this up. You're right. We need to, when we talk about fraud and criminal tax, we think about there is an accusation even in the title. For this podcast, I was thinking of changing, of calling it criminal tax. And I said, no, people are going to be scared. The reason why, my opinion as a tax lawyer, is that since 2018 in France, fraud is not only cum-cum, like the cum-cum settlements where you have an enormous system to optimize abuse depending on the views, a system. Today, this is a big change in at least the French tax system, but I know it's the case in Hungary, in Poland, in many different countries, where the scope of what is called a fraud is not only intentional, especially when we are in laundering of tax fraud, of accusation of laundering of tax fraud. The fact that today there is an omission of paying tax of a significant amount without any structure, imagination, let's say, it's considered today by the French tax authority as a tax fraud. And then, because depending on the amount, and if they consider there is bad faith, which is not different as intentional criminal sanction as we have in the penal code, this is where there are lots of future documents where it can be a fully compliant, but still there is an omission because there is disagreement. And today there is also this challenge of the proof, of the burden of the proof, where if there is an omission, a significant omission on transfer pricing and disagreement on the tax authorities or on PE, it's the burden, the proof burden on the tax side is going at the level of the taxpayer. And this is a big change in my practice. I've been practicing about 20 years. So that's why thank you very much for bringing this. Today, my statement is tax fraud in France is not is very wide. A big error is a tax fraud today.
No, I understand your point. As I said, for my practice, in-house practice, I would say, which was a bit a long time ago now, more than 10 years. Again, we were very dedicated to do our best to respect the laws, and they were very numerous. And because within the company I work for, there were, can I say, trade at the New York Stock Exchange, for instance. So we are very, everything was very touchy because the level of the action of the shares of those companies are so important that everything needs to be respected. Again, the reputational risk is not only about the reputation of the company. It's about it's very concrete, very financial, very often, because there is an effect on the level of the share very often, and it was a mindset. Those companies. It's not. I don't want to say that just because I work for those company and I'm kind of. As we can say in French, bini oui oui. It was the reality. Maybe we were not less when maybe our workforce was not sufficient to cover everything, but we definitely did our best, and we were covered by so many regulations. Tax, tax is one point, and there was a team dedicated to tax issues, but FCPA is another one. I don't know if you are familiar with this kind of regulations. Regulation about I don't know, clinical trials, anything. As I said, life science is covered by regulations. Now again, I understand your point, and
yeah, thank you for bringing this experience. And so in your experience, maybe I'm simplifying my understanding. Do you consider that the groups are well prepared for what I consider to be a wave of tax fraud investigation? And are they sufficiently prepared because they try to meet compliance?
It's impossible to answer precisely to this question because again, I got the chance to work for a giant company where the legal department was something like 500 lawyers. But today is in my private practice, I work for a company with one or two lawyers. Very often they are overwhelmed by work. No, I cannot. I could not say that any and each company in France are well prepared to such a wave. No, definitely not.
Okay. So, to your opinion, how do you consider this would have an impact in your future years of working, or it's really, I'm trying to see how the environment, I would say the legal environment, advisory environment is aware, ready, not ready to see that in the future. And what's your opinion in that?
Honestly, it's not a discussion I have with my clients nowadays. So maybe they've got that in mind, but they don't talk with me about those subjects because they identify me as a lawyer for different things. I would be happy, that to be at least a question about this issue about because at least I could give them an advice to have a consultation with a specialized tax or something like that, and I think it will be a clear advice to give them.
Yes, to
As
me,
a
what I
private practitioner, yeah, for me, it's an axis of development, I would say. Why not,
yes, and what I think what is a barrier today is more like in many organizations, the teams are overwhelmed by
Yeah.
regulations, by
I-
uncertainty. So
Absolutely.
today, the only way this topic comes into their plate is by a police officer coming to the head office.
Yeah.
Am I
There's something,
exaggerating?
no, you are not exaggerating at all. There's something which didn't change, over 20 years. It's we are more and more, we face new regulation still is existing, new regulation, and the workload is bigger and bigger. And I think it's very difficult for companies today to cover everything and to be 100% respectful of any and each regulation, especially in tax, uh, which is a very specific and complex field. I got a recent experience. Sometimes I'm embedded into companies still today. I do what we call transition mission in French,
Mhm.
and I work for when a company have a special operation, I don't know, M&A or whatever, or need of manpower. I work with them, and yeah, I constated it even recently. Very often, legal team are less. There is few people in the legal team. 1, 2, 3. When you are over 5, it starts to be a very big companies. Teams with more than 20, 10 or 20 lawyers is in my vision, exceptional. And it's not depending on the size of the company, but all those companies and more have an international exposition. I mean, even mid-sized company are obliged to go and fetch some new markets outside. So, the problematics for me are exactly the same than 20 years ago in giant international companies, even for smaller group. But they have less resources to deal with all that. But definitely, and maybe 20 years ago, a company, a mid-sized company was less internationalized and with less problematic of complex problematic, even in tax. And but nowadays it's definitely not. It's not anymore the case. Any and each mid-sized company is obliged again, as I said, again to find new markets outside in Europe, outside Europe, everywhere. And of course, it's an increase of your exposition to tax issues. And
But this is I sorry. I wanted to react because I felt you raised two very interesting takeaways. First of all, about uh, these remarks about the lack of resources, and also how we should consider risk management. What I understand is, as lawyer, for me, I would consider that first is criminal risk, tax, regulatory. Then it will be maybe labor law risk, and so on. And what I hear from your experience, sorry, it was two sentences before you jump into a new topic. So I'm just coming back to this first topic, and that in the priorities of the companies, mid-size or global group, it's first the risk management is dealt first with notoriety risk, of course, economic notoriety, and then it depends at which level of the ladder we are, but the risk management is more going to be dealt with that than with other topic. That's why they will follow more pure compliance regulations with maybe less consequences, but with less consequences, but it's an operational obligation. That's the hierarchy. And my point is, we should put criminal tax or other topics behind, because this is going to be a big wave, considering the public financings are very low in most countries right now.
yeah, if you allow me, a direct answer is, the main goal, the main purpose, and the main concern of the companies today is to maintain that turnover and to find new and to find growth. And it's true for any companies, and because the international competition is more fierce than before, I would say, and the need of surviving is still existing, but it's more pregnant, I would say, more present. And so the first concern of the company is to maintain its turnover and the growth. The second, we have to do that with all the regulation. They have to do that with all the regulations you mentioned. So with reputational risk, with criminal risk, within a world which is much more complex, regulated, dangerous than before. And we can see that all of us looking at the news anytime. You have now new question of taxes, tariffs and things like that. The world is more dangerous for companies. So the operational world and the question of the taxes is it's something totally you have to live with. It's totally compulsory. It's of course a danger. I started saying that for me, companies do not they don't make mistake by purpose. Generally they are embedded into the operation. They try to do their best to organize everything, to have the right documentation, to answer correctly to the tax authority when they have questions, to receive the tax investigators when they want to visit your companies. And you have so many work to do on the top of it. You have that. So and yes, the evil is into the details, I would say, into the thing you cannot master because they don't have time. And I think the reason of being of the tax lawyer and lawyers like you is very important, because you have to discharge those company of the risk of this risk, and to advise them, and to give them the best advice to avoid an issue which can be today, I would say, definitive. You can be killed by
Yes,
the tax criminal investigation or tax criminal issue.
that's why indeed this is the whole purpose. Is like when they implement operations today in France, we have. In the US, you have to pay for that, but in France, you can have ruling. You have new system to regularize, to guarantee the good faith. I think we are coming to the last minutes of our show. Maybe as an opening, closing, or I think this topic is going to take more and more space. Also, because of the artificial intelligence, and which will really put the barrier between a human being and the AI is the liability. What's your feeling about this, about this implementation of artificial intelligence regarding the liability and how we can protect more clients, whether it's for drafting the most relevant contract, to file the regulation, what you were saying when you in the transition assignments. Is it something also that you take into account, because the topic also of criminal tax or not tax, artificial intelligence and contracts, at the end it's a human being who will be caught.
Yeah. Thanks for the
It's a long
question, because
question. It's a very
long and very complex question. Taking a bit to answer it. Well, first of all, I'm very excited with AI in general, because for me, I think even in my own practice, it's such a relief, I would say. You can be really quicker with AI. It doesn't replace you at all, but it challenges you sometimes. You challenge the AI, so you learn from the challenge you give to the AI, and vice versa. Well, I work alone, so I work my own practice, so it's definitely a kind of collaborator. And so for my part, I'm very pro AI. I use some well-known AI, mostly American, because my clients are mainly American. So if I get an issue, I prefer to have an issue with an American client, because of an American AI. It's something you can understand. Even themselves, they use a lot, AI. So AI is definitely there. I wouldn't have the same answer if I work for pure European companies, and it's another question. Question of sovereignty. Do you need to have a European AI? Of course. Can AI be? And your second part of your question was, can AI be an issue for the company? I don't think so. From today's, they're gonna help them to save margins.
it may create more liability for the human being. That's my assumption.
For me, it's
I wrong belief.
it's definitely not. But you cannot decrease the liability you have as a international in-house in legal counsel or lawyer because of the AI. It can help you to do your job. It cannot do the job for you. So the liability is definitely always in your hands and only yours. This is my opinion. After that, saying, okay, I'm a big boy. I'm the responsible guy to do this task, but I can use any tools available, and AI is one of them. So in that case, for me, AI is definitely a great help. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't it doesn't cancel your liability or avoid your liability. No, you are still in charge. You are still responsible. But on a day-to-day basis, yes, it's a great help, and even in companies, yes. Well, for in-house counsel, as I said, they are very often overwhelmed with work. They can do many things quicker, and you know, like me, that to be a lawyer is sometimes very, can I say that, very concrete. You need to drafting. Drafting is using your fingers. It takes times to write, to read, to rewrite. And of course, AI can be quicker for that. I experienced that I wrote. I'm going to give you an example, very concrete, without saying any names. I was working for a client, mid-sized company, subcontractor of giant companies, and I have to negotiate a subcontract agreement with this giant international company. In front of me, I had maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 lawyers. I was alone. The contract was huge, maybe, I don't know, 150 pages. Everything very complex. Everything was imposed by the contractor, the giant company. And AI can allow you, to face this charge. Imagine you are a small player in a small company, alone, with a small budget, and in front of you, you have giant companies, and it's very often the case. With, I don't know, hundreds of lawyers. Of course, the contract is coming from this company, draft, in a way that everything is very complex. Nothing is simple. Everything is tricky, and it's done for purpose. And yes, when you are a small company using an outside company like me, it's good because it's saving time, saving money, and yeah.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of this first episode of podcast to connect, anticipate, and defend. François, can I let you the last word of your last thought before we finish?
Thank you for the invitation again. It was a real pleasure to discuss those issues with you. I think it's a very good idea to have this podcast because even if I'm not a tax lawyer, I was not totally connected with your day-to-day work. Maybe you understand better, what is to be a lawyer, an operational lawyer, working with different companies. Of course, we are connected with tax, and our job is to avoid that such an issue comes up, but we never know. And but yes, there is a link, and I hope I enlightened your knowledge of how it works into companies. I was sure that you have a good knowledge of that, but it was my experience. It is my experience, I would say.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You've been tuning into Delphine Parigi's podcast, Tax Defense Connect by DPZ. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.